Hello, welcome to Math Topics with Jeff. Today we're going to be going over the unit circle as it serves core foundation and purpose for calculus in solving trigonomic functions, finding derivatives, and solving integrals, and also through the non-calculator section of the AP exam. So let's first figure out our degrees. So if you know a circle is 360 degrees, we can figure out already that right here we start at 0 degrees. And then if you understand your quadrant, each quadrant is another 90 degrees. So this is 0 degrees. Right up here, you would have 90 degrees. And then right here, you would actually have 180 degrees. And then down here, you would have 270 degrees. And then you would have 360, but you're just going to reset. So we're back at 0. And then when it comes to memorizing the other degrees, you can imagine that each quadrant is split into 30 degrees fragments. So right here, essentially this is 30 degrees, this fragment's 30 degrees, and this fragment is 30 degrees. And what this means is that each 30 degrees, it all adds up to 90. It all adds up to each other. So essentially, this 30 degrees, this is 30 degrees, but we see that it's in two parts. So it's actually going to be 30 divided by 2, which is the difference between these. These are both 15. And so when we do those, we know that this part right here is the 30 degree. And then we know that this part is also 30 degrees. So if you want to, you can already go and already skip to 60 degree. And because this is split into two sections, and the difference between them, or there's no difference between them, but there's two sections and they both are equally shared and they both add up to 30 degrees. We know that that is going to be 15 for each jump. So then we just place 45 degrees. And then over here, we have the same inference throughout the whole unit circle. So we know that this is also going to be another 30 degree jump, 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 and another 30 degree jump. And essentially, people might get confused when they see that there's multiple, lines, and that it might confuse them to wanting to go to another 30 degrees, another 30 degrees. But don't get confused. It's still 30 degrees. The only difference is that since there's one in between splitting them, it's just the halfway point between 30 degrees, which is 15. So let's go through the whole unit circle and label our degrees. So we know that this is 90. We have another 30 degree jump. So it's going to be 120 degrees. And then we can go ahead and skip 150 degrees. But if you know that in between 150 degrees and 120 degrees is just 135 degrees, so you can already put that there. And then we already had labeled earlier from when we were going through our degrees and just the degrees of a circle. We know that this is the halfway point, which is 180. So now we're going to fill in the bottom half of 80 degrees. So we know we have another 30 degree jump right here, 210 degrees. And then we have another 30 degree jump right here. We got 240 degrees, and the halfway point between 210 and 240 is 225 degrees. We have another 30 degree jump, which brought us to 270. And then we have another 30 degree jump, which would bring us to 300 degrees. And then we have our last, or not our last, but we have another 30 degree jump, which would bring us to 330 degrees. And we know that the halfway point between 300 and 330 degrees is 315 degrees. And then it would bring us back to 360, which would restart the unit circle, and then we start at 0, so on and so forth. Pretty simple, pretty easy. I guess that's the way I like to understand it and how I like to interpret the unit circle when it comes to degrees. It's probably the easier part of memorizing the unit circle, or one of the easier components of it. Now let's move on to we can go to points. Now the points is honestly what I would say I like you can play with the most. Well, the good thing about the points is that almost every point except for our 90-degree jumps are fractions. And so these, if you know your quadrants, you'll know what to label these 4 corner points. So right here, if you know that this is the x-axis, and that because it's on the straight line and it's not, vertically up, we know that our y point is going to be 0, and that our x point is going to be 1 on the x-axis, and they're going to be positive because it's in quadrant 1, as I have labeled here. And then right here, it's going to be actually 0 or 1. Down here, right here, as this time, because we're going to be in the second and third quadrant, we have our x's are both negatives in those quadrants, or our x coordinate, so then it'd actually be -1, 0, and then right here it's just opposite, 0, -1, as the y is negative in the third and the fourth quadrant. So now that we have those 4 corner pillars done, to find the other points are in between. Now this is gonna be the fun part. They're all fractions, right? We know that we don't need any negative signs because we're in quadrant 1, so it's all gonna be positive. And the cool thing about this is that all of our denominators are 2. Okay, so then how I like to memorize it, from the top half of the unit circle, we go down 1, 2, 3. And then on the bottom half, we'll go down 3, 2, 1, so on and so forth. And I'll show you. So we start strong with 1, 2, 3. And then we go up 1, 2, 3. Same thing with this side. I'll just make these. We go down 1, 2, 3. Then we go up for the y coordinate, 1, 2, 3. While our denominators are 2 on every single fraction. Okay, and so right after we do that, you add a square root. The square root of 1 is 1. So we just keep that there. Square root, and keep that one there. Square root of 1 is 1. And now, here's the catch. Since we're on the second quadrant, this means that actually our x values are going to be, our x coordinates are all going to be negative. So you can place negative sign and still do the same thing when it comes to the square root signs. We have square root of 3, square root of 2, negative square root of 2 actually, negative square root of 3, square root of 1 is 1. So now we're going to get to the bottom half of the coordinates. So now, like up here, all of our denominators are going to be just 2. So 2, 2, one sec. 2, 2, 2, 2. And then let's do right here, create for our fractions. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Now earlier I had mentioned that it's actually the opposite when we go to the bottom half of the unit circle. And what I meant was that instead of starting from 1 and going down 1, 2, 3, and then going up 1, 2, 3, it is actually flipped. And on the bottom we go down 3, 2, 1, and go up 3, 2, 1. And then because we are in the third quadrant, each of our values, our coordinates, are negative. And we would just take the square root as we did in our upper quadrants. So still square root of 3, square root of 2, square root of 2, square root of 3, square root of 1 is 1. And then same thing, since we're on the bottom quadrant still, we're going to be going down 3, 2, 1, up 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1, then up 3, 2, 1. And because we're on the fourth quadrant, our y coordinate is actually going to be negative. So we can just, and then bam, bam, square root, square root of 1 is 1. And now, the last part of memorizing the unit circle, you need to memorize your radians. So, to memorize the radians, for each of the halfway points, I guess the 45 degree, for each of the 45 degree angles of each quadrant, it's just going to be the pi's over 4s. So we can just start by writing right here, pi over 4. And now, what I meant by when I said in the 45 degree, like I guess the halfway point, or the halfway degree in that cuts each quadrant in half, you're just gonna go up by 2 pi over 4. So essentially it'll look like this. Pi over 4, then right here, it'll be 3 pi over 4. Then right here, we got 5 pi over 4. And then right here, we have 7 pi over 4. All right, we got our pi's over 4 out of the way. Now, we have actually the pi over 6s, which, or pi, pi over 6s. How I like to think, every 30 degrees, you move up pi over 6. So right here, we have pi over 6. We move up 30 degrees to 60 degrees, it actually is going to simplify to pi over 3, hence 2 pi over 6. And then another 30 degrees, it's actually going to be 3, sorry, my bad. It's another pi over 6 is actually going to be 3 pi over 6, which is just going to be pi over 2. And by the way, this is still 0 right there. And then another 30 degree jump, we're gonna another 30 degree jump, add another pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, which would actually just simplify to 2 pi over 3. And then our next 30 degree jump, add another pi over 6, 5 pi over 6. And then for our last 30 degree jump, we just add another pi over 6, which pi over 6 plus 5 pi over 6 is literally just going to be pi. Simple as that. And then we are going to add another pi over 6 to our 6 pi over 6. No, 6 pi over 6. Yeah, okay, 6 pi over 6. Add another pi over 6, which would just be 7 pi over 6. And then another 30 degree jump, just add another pi over 6. 8 pi over 6 just simplifies to 4 pi over 3. Another 30 degree jump, it would be 9 pi. It would be 9 pi over 6, which just simplifies to 3 pi over 2. And then we add another, for our next 30 degree jump, we just add another pi over 6, which would just be 10 pi over 6, which simplifies to 5 pi over 3. Pi over 3. And then for our last pi over 6, we said 10 pi over 6 plus another 5 pi over 6 for our last 30 degree jump. And it would, or not our last actually, sorry. And then it's actually going to be 11 pi over 6. And then right here, because we're making a full circle, full revolution, we would have actually 2 pi. And that sums it. That is the unit circle. That is how I go about the unit circle and memorizing it. Like I said, it is a very, very, very important concept, and very important concept to know in order to solve non-calculated problems that involve any type of trigonometry and requires you to have to think of the unit circle. And though it can sometimes be long, you have to think to yourself, because you don't get a formula chart on the AP exam. You kind of have to think to yourself, like, you have to remember the unit circle. And if you need to write it out, it doesn't hurt to do it anyway. You know, you want to get those easy points off of your knowing just your trig unit circle. And yes, that is it. Thank you for watching the video. I hope y'all have a blessed day.